Hi guys, it's Eric here. In this session, we're going to talk about how you can deploy your infrastructure with Infracodebase, right? This is just the basics. It's just for you to understand how to set up your infrastructure before you can even start talking about compute applications and database, right? So this is for anyone who wants to get into cloud, who wants to understand the basics, right? And so in this session, the essence is for us to, um, build a secured AWS VPC foundation, right, using Infracodebase and its principles within a sandbox. This within a sandbox environment, right? Um, and of course, like I said, the most important thing here is the basics for you to understand, right? So whether you are an expert cloud engineer or whether you are still getting into cloud or whether you're intermediary, it's always good that you can revisit the basics, right? The fundamentals. And so that is the essence of this video. And also such that you can deploy your infrastructure faster, right? And also well secured. So in this session, I'll show you how you can do all of that with Infracodebase. And so with Infracodebase, this is just my workspace. This is my workspace on Infracodebase. And as you can see on this section here, I first have to, have in mind the kind of infrastructure that I want to provision, right? The networking, the security settings, the entire workflow. I need to have that at the back of my mind, right? So what I wanted to do here, like I said, was to build a secured AWS VPC foundation using Infracode-based principles, and this was within a workspace, a sandbox environment. And the setup should include a custom VPC, public and private subnets, across two ASIS, right? And an internet gateway, a NAT gateway, and properly separated route tables, right? So everything would be done, of course, with Terraform, right? Infrastructure provisioning. So when I give my prompt, Infracodebase is going to tell me what's going to, to provision, right? It's going to give me all the steps, all the checkings, and all of that, right? And then the first check is if there is already an existing infrastructure, if there is any, before it can then proceed to, provision, give you the the setup and then deploy your infrastructure, right? So it does all of that, all of those checks, giving you and explaining to you what it's doing, right? So that you are not lost, right? You're in full control and you have a total view of what's going on, right? Yes, you have a total view of what's going on. So this is just to show you that Infracodebase can explain everything to you. It does all the explanation. And one important thing it does is that now I'm provisioning my infrastructure on AWS, right? So it's going to check if my credentials are properly configured. So normally, I'm first supposed to configure my AWS credentials, right? So that Infracodebase, can have that authentication, can have access to my um, AWS account and then provision the infrastructure, right? So that is the first thing it does. But unfortunately, I never had any idea about this, right? That it could do this. So um, I just gave my prompt, right, without having that consideration. I thought I have to manually go or do the authentication on the terminal, right? But in this case, no. Everything happens on your workspace, right? The authentication into your AWS account, right? The provisioning, the deployment of your infrastructure, uh, everything, the integration, everything happens on the Infracode-based workspace. You don't have to manually do any setups, right? So first, I was supposed to come to the workspace settings here. So when I come to the workspace settings here, under secrets here, this is where I'm going to input my AWS credentials, right? Yeah, I did that later on, but that is just to tell you that before you start yours, make sure you do your configuration, right? Yeah. Let me come back to my workspace. Let me go back. Yes, so like I said, everything is explained, right? You are not lost. You have a total view of what's going on, what's going to provision, the steps, everything. Infracodebase gives you all of those details. It explains to you, right? And so when it's done explaining all of that, it's going to tell you that it has successfully built a secure AWS VPC foundation using, the conditions you set, right? And it's going to give you the infrastructure components, right? And the first thing, of course, is a VPC, and it's going to give you the multi-AZ design, the four subnets, as it explained, the internet gateway, the NAT gateway, everything, all of that, the security features integrated is going to give it to you, right? And it's also going to give you the cost optimization, right? It's telling you that, okay, it has used a single NAT gateway instead of a AZ NAT gateway, which is going to save you this amount, right? And this is very important detail when it comes to cost optimization. Um, it also tells you that it's going to optimize your cost by not using a VPN gateway by default, right? And so you see that at the end of the month, you can save up to $36, right? At the end of the day, what is your estimated cost, savings that you have? You're going to have 45 to 50 months primarily for NAT gateway, right? So that's one good thing I like about Infracodebase. Um, and so we see here the complete architecture, right? The file structure, the project structure itself, right? How you're going to have it. It gives you that view firsthand on the spot, right? Yeah. And then the next step is just to add, is telling you that it needs to add the AWS credentials, like I said, because it realized that, oh, there are no credentials, right? So how am I going to provision the infrastructure, right? And also is going to customize the variables, right? That's going to be the next step. Of course, that has to be done in your the TFVAS, excuse me, right? That has to be done, and then when it has done that, it's going to deploy, the infrastructure, running the Terraform commands, right? From init right up to deploy, all of that will be done, right? And then subsequently, if I want, or if you want, you can then talk about compute, right? This way you add your EC2 instances, your database, your applications, your load balancers, right? That can be done later on, right? So here is telling you that the infrastructure is ready. The infrastructure is ready, right? That's it. That's just it. So just beside this, we see the code, right? The infrastructure is, that's already generated, right? We have the main folder, and then we have everything. You have the JSON, we have the git file that's already generated, and then we have the main TF, the main.tf, we have the output.tf, and also most important thing too is that it generates you the README file, which is a very good thing, right? Even though I would have said no, it shouldn't generate, but it did that. Or also, even if it didn't generate me the README file, I will still add the prompt for it to generate the README file, which I really enjoy. And then we have the routing, the TF, the security groups, of course. And then we have the TFVAS, right, which we are supposed to edit the variables .tf and then the VPC.tf. So that's the good thing about Infracodebase. So when you come to the main .tf, .tf, we have, of course, our provider, right? Yeah, which is AWS. We configure our provider here, and then our tags, and then the best practices. For best practices, it's going to give you our tags, and then the data sources for availability zones. All of that is given, right? All of that provision is given in the main.tf, right? And then, of course, the output. What are we going to have at the end of the day? We're going to have a VPC, and it's giving you the information about the VPC, right? Its description and the values, and also the CIDR blocks. So all of that is generated. We have our README file, right? We have our README file, and then the routing. We have the routing here, and also we have the security groups up to the vpc.tf, right? So this is our code that has been generated, right? And then the good thing too is our diagram, the architectural design, right? So we have it here. This is it here. So the design is generated as we set in our prompt, right? As you know, as we indicated in the prompt. So we just have everything generated, the NAT gateway, the public route tables 1 and 2, right? I mean, we have the public route tables, and then we have the private route table, and then we have our subnets, right? The private subnet and the the public subnet. So all of that we have generated, provided in this architectural diagram, of course, using AWS icons, right? That is also the good thing about it. So if you, at the end of the day, you see that the diagram doesn't match what you envision or what you wanted, of course, you can just put that in the prompt. Can you remove this? Can you improve this? Right? And it does that for you on the spot, right? So if you want to also see the flow from, let's say, from the public route table, up to the internet gateway, you can see that entire flow, right? That's a good thing. Whichever direction you want to see the flow, just click on the service, right? And then you see the flow between the different resources in your infrastructure, right? That's the good thing about Infracodebase 2. And so when you've done all of this, right, you don't need to run your code or run your commands on a different environment. Everything is run on your workspace, right? From Terraform init up to Terraform deploy, right? Everything you do it here. So for me, I did this like 2 weeks ago, right? I want to redo it. So if you've done this, just run all the Terraform. It's going to do it for you, right? Infracodebase is going to do it for you on the spot here, right? You can give it a command that the infrastructure should be provisioned, right? And so it's going to do that. You don't need to stress, right? You're not going to stress. And so for me, I already have everything on my GitHub was already pushed. So when you've done all of that, you can say push all the changes to my GitHub, right? Because I already have my GitHub account too integrated. That is the good thing, right? So I have everything on my GitHub. Things here. Yes, okay. So this is my GitHub. Yeah, everything is already pushed to my GitHub account, right? Yes, everything. I don't need to, you know, do anything. Run some commands on a different setup, right? Yeah, everything is already here. Everything, everything, right? From all the configuration files, everything is there. My README, just everything is here, right? Yeah. But the thing too is that about the diagram, I had to manually come and input the diagram here just to improve my README file, right? Yeah, I had to manually come and do that. But of course, at the end of the day, this saves you a huge amount of time, and also you are deploying infrastructure that is well secured, right? And also infrastructure that is repeatable, right? If I get into a new environment and they have a similar setup, I just need to replicate this code in that same environment, right? Which saves you a lot of time, right? So that's just it. That's just it. And then also another thing that you might also want to do on Infracodebase is you might want to do the quality testing, vulnerability testing, and all of that in this workspace, right? So you might want to do the TFSec, right? The checkoff and all of that. You can just say, okay, do the checkoff, do the TFSec for this infrastructure, for this code, and it's going to do that for you, right? It's going to do that for you. Yeah. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you enjoy this. Go and try it in your own environment. Uh, Try to learn, practice, and keep sharing. So it's been a pleasure. Bye for now.